Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of Empire of the Full Moon. I'm Mike Cadaver, and today we're going to be talking about a movie from 1996, potentially my favorite all-time full moon picture in Head of the Family. Now, before we get into that, let's talk about a couple of things first. As I've mentioned, and I've talked about this a few times over the running of the show, that Full Moon and Empire, basically Charles Band's career, you could kind of split up into eras. Whether it was the Empire era, but you could even, depending on how granular you want to get, you could even chop that down a little bit more. However, we're going to be talking about the Full Moon features eras a little bit today. The golden era from about 1988 to 1995 is right when Empire went under and Charles Band struck up a business partnership with Paramount Pictures, and they were there to help fund his movies and help distribute those movies. And this is the golden era, 1988 to 1995. Now, there was a lot of things going on for them, for Full Moon at the time. Charles Band had a lot of people at Paramount that believed in him, and so they gave him a lot of faith, and they were making a ton of money. So this was, like I said, this is the ultimate age of Full Moon, and that's kind of what we remember. I remember going to even smaller mom and pop video stores and seeing just tons of Full Moon stuff in there as well. Anyway, so as the years went by, a couple of bad things happened. First of all, some of the people at Paramount went on to bigger and better things. So the people who had believed in Charles Band so much were kind of, the turnover was having an effect, and also the industry as a whole wasn't quite making as much money. So that ended in about 1995. But of course, Full Moon and Charles Band, they never say die. They haven't said die to this day so far after they've been through a bunch of stuff. And anyway, so this is called the Full Moon Studios era. And they hooked up with Kushner Locke and a few other situations that they had going on at this time. But that's when this movie came out, Head of the Family, 1996. And to be honest with you, they do kind of have a different feel from some of those earlier ones, probably to do with budgetary concerns, stuff like that. However, they made some amazing movies in this era, and this is one of them. So why don't we go ahead and play a quick trailer for Head of the Family, and we'll be right back to talk about it.
You must have took a wrong turn.
Honey, there ain't no turns off this highway.
What was it, Lance? What did you see back there?
I saw the light, honey. I saw the light.
You've met my brothers and my sister, Mr. Bogan. I don't believe we've ever met. My name is Myron Stackpool. I'm pardon the expression, the head of the family. We Stackpools all have our peculiarities.
You made them folks downstairs go away. I want you to do the same thing for Howard Oates. You make him go away.
And you aren't at all concerned about my subjects down in the basement?
Letting you do what you do, just letting you stay around and keeping my mouth shut, that's a price to me. A man takes a risk, why he ought to get paid for it. Seems reasonable to me.
You press too hard and you make it worth it for me to employ desperate measures. I'm not normally a vindictive person, but in your case, I'm going to make an exception.
All right, everybody, you just saw the trailer for Head of the Family, 1996. IMDb currently has a 5.3. It was first of all, it was written and directed by Charles Band, but he also worked with Benjamin Carr, who, not surprisingly, wrote Hideous. It has a couple things in common. It has the same look and feel, definitely, but it also has Jackie Lavelle's boobies in it, so we also like that as well. It starred Blake Adams as Lance, Jacqueline Lavelle as Loretta. She was in a ton of stuff for Full Moon Features. A lot of the stuff was on their Surrender Cinema, or was it the other one? The Torchlight. It was one of the softcore labels that Charles Band had anyway. But she was in Hideous, Familian, Killer Eye, and okay, so I think it's Surrender. But she also ended up doing Trophy Heads in 2014, where they kind of brought back all the scream queens of that era, and some were in a bunch of full moons, some weren't, but definitely there. But yeah, it starred J.W. Para as Myron, as the head of the family, pun intended. Bob Schott as Otis. He was actually a gymnast and like a real martial artist. And the great thing about that is he did a movie. I don't know if it was a movie or if it was like a set of videos, but he did Jim Kata, which I have never heard of, but I started reading about that and I was like, man, that sounds pretty wild. But anyway, Alexandra Quinn is Ernestina, and she was a former porn star. And actually, if you look at her in the movie, you can tell that she's built for that kind of stuff, it seems like. Also, she was a little bit controversial because, like Tracy Lords, she did some of the underage stuff, and I have never seen it, and I will never see it. However, I think that, we've talked about in a couple of the other episodes how the new pulp noir movies are coming out. They at least have one porn star in them to do some nudie stuff, and maybe this is an old idea that Charles Band has had and has been utilizing for a long, long time. Anyway, let's see. It also starred Gordon Jennison, Noyce as Howard, Noyce, and James Jones as Wheeler. All right, so this was shot over 2 weeks in May 1996 at Band's Studios in Glendale, California. I'm going to read the synopsis directly out of Charles Band's book, Confessions of a Puppet Master, because it's perfect. It's pure Southern Gothic. A young diner owner stumbles on the Stackpool family, a terrifying quartet of inbred siblings, a hulking enforcer, an oversexed bombshell, a geek with super sharp senses, and a disgusting giant-brained head on a tiny shrunken microbody. Essentially, the head, Myron, wants to be a real boy with a full-size body and is willing to experiment on an unlimited supply of kidnapped drifters until he figures it out. Meanwhile, he's suddenly being blackmailed by his young businessman and his girlfriend. And so, yeah, that's basically the story. And like many full moon features, the synopsis doesn't quite touch closely to what you're going to be dealing with while you're watching, because yeah, that's the synopsis, but it is wild. Anyways, a couple of things that this left out that I wanted to mention. The siblings are quadruplets, and Myron has a psychic connection with them, so he with the guy who has very sensitive senses. Well, that's a weird thing to say, but he can see and hear and all that stuff. He can control the big brainiac as well as a sex bomb, and I hope he doesn't feel it. How weird. Anyways, I don't even want to think about that. Anyways, they're all freaks in their own way, but they're family, so Myron loves them, and there you go. And the best thing about Myron, the head of the family, and I'm sure you saw it in the trailer, is that he is very dramatic. He's very well-read and well-spoken, and he speaks with a kind of a class that is above basically anyone in that town, including Lance, who kind of has that southern drawl, and so they're speaking to each other. It's super fun. Anyways, let's see. So just to get into my opinion a little bit about this, it's kind of a noirish, like it said it was a Southern Gothic thing, but the dialogue in this is so fun, especially between Lance and Myron, as they're going back and forth. But even with Jacqueline Lavelle's character, Loretta, and it's just fun to sit there and listen to them go back and forth. And yeah, there's a lot of nudity and there's a lot of, sexy stuff, which is real fun. But I feel like the best part of this movie happens to be the dialogue that goes back and forth. And just also on top of the absurd situations and the absurd things that happen. And it's super fun. But like I said, this is one of my very favorite. So my dream girl, the reason it's my favorite, my dream girl back in those old days was Jacqueline Lavelle. She is gorgeous. She's funny. And they talked about it in the book too, right? In the Confessions of a Puppet Master, where the people are talking, or no, sorry, it wasn't that one. It was the video. It came from the video aisle. There's a write-up about this movie by Thomas Sawyers, Suyers. And, they talk a little bit about one thing, but I'll talk to you about real quick. But they just said about how there's so many of these young women in Hollywood that are cute, and there's so many that can act, and so many that are funny and charismatic and all that. And you rarely get all that in one. But they loved Jacqueline Lovell, and she just did a great job with that. But yeah, I'll get into that. I'll get into a little bit more from that book in just a minute. And okay, so just so you know, I did show this to a buddy of mine, a non-exploitation / horror, or just kind of a normie where he watches action and he doesn't be into sports stuff. I'm into sports too. I mean, I'm not trying to talk about it, but he's not really a movie guy. And there's one thing that you have to admit, this is a little bit graphic for people like that. Like, to me, there was just a lot of sex, a lot of nudity, and the problem is you can't really fast forward that because Lance and Loretta have a big dialogue during the coitus, and where they're actually kind of making their plot and doing all that stuff. So just be ready. It is very graphic, so you may not want to watch it with the kids or anything like that. But anyways. And I think also one of the things that I really appreciated about this movie is that every small town, I didn't grow up in a particularly small town, but from what I've heard, and my wife did, and I've talked to her about this too, that everybody kind of knows everybody's business. Even if you don't know each other, you know who they are, and people whisper in small towns, and that's kind of that's kind of shown in this, where everybody, like in the diner, know the Stackpools. They see the Stackpools, and whispers begin, and rumors and gossip and all this stuff. And so yeah, it's great, and that's a real fun thing because once all said and done, and the blackmail starts happening, it's funny. And it's just small town, southern accent, stuff like that. It's great. Anyway, okay. So let me talk about okay, so we're back to Confessions of a Puppet Master. This is Charles Band's book. He wrote that with Adam Felber. And so every once in a while, the way it was structured is you'd have a regular chapter of Charles Band, telling a story or how something came to pass or anything like that. But every once in a while, you'd have this featurette in the book. And one of these featurettes, it's just kind of like a page or something like that to talk about just a little something silly, or, it's not part of the main story that's being told at the moment. But one thing they talked about in this one was called, it was all about Myron's tongue. And for those who've seen this movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm just going to read a couple of things about it. It goes into a disgusting detail about what the tongue was like and described it in a lot of details and just how disgusting it was and how everybody was, kind of like squirming as it was happening. And, oh man, just kind of a bad news thing. But the funny thing is there's even one part where it comes out and it's like really long, and it flicks Jackie Lovell's boob, and it's just like, oh, I remember that part. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, you're right. That was disgusting. But she was apparently she was a great sport, and she had a good laugh with it. And so it just seems like a lot of times when I'm reading these books or when I'm listening to them, or like, I'll hear people say, yeah, listen, it didn't work out between me working with Charles Band or something like that. But when I did work there, it was like family. And I feel like kind of you would have to have that kind of a family atmosphere. Not family. Because my work tries to tell me we're family. I'm like, no, we're not, you assholes. Anyways, don't even get me started on that. My bad. But but to have there and be comfortable with those people you're working for and working with. And man, it just sounded like a lot of fun. Okay, so let's talk about the book. I got into it a little bit, but let's talk about what I actually wanted to talk about. In chapter 2 of a book called It Came from the Video Aisle, they talked a little bit about some of the backstory and where this could have come from. Well, and this was written by Thomas Sawyer as well. So basically, in 1954, a comic book named Black Magic had an 8-page story named Head of the Family. It's written by Jack Kirby. Now, the same Jack Kirby that was involved in Empire Pictures early on when they were working on what were they working on? What was that movie? Jack Kirby worked on Marvel stuff, and he worked for DC for a while. Marvel, he actually helped create Captain America, Hulk, and seriously, one of the biggest. He worked with Charlie. It ended up becoming Dr. Mordred. My goodness, I could not remember that. He actually came up with a story that became Mandroid and Dr. Mordred. So so this is based off stuff, and I've got some pictures on the screen that you can check it out. But to quote that book, after the plot of the story in the comic book is explained, it says, while it may not sound very familiar, the characters are dead on, because if you look at it, there's a big strong guy, there's this high, but I mean the story itself didn't have anything to do with it, but I'm sure it had to be based off that. But I will never know, but that's just something I put up some pictures anyway. Well, like I said, it's one of my favorite full moon features, maybe my absolute favorite one. I mean, it's hard to keep a favorite because depending on the mood, but I would say I come back to, well, I don't watch it that often because, like I said, it's very graphic, and I can't watch it with the kids or the wife around. My wife wouldn't care so much, but I feel really weird about it, and so yeah, that's on me. But anyways, the sequel there has been a sequel that's been talked about for years since this first one came out, and it's been kind of a thing, a rumor that has been going on for that long. There is even a treatment that was started in 1997, and you can read that. You can read all about that too, and it came from the video aisle. But also, if you go to and I've talked about the Deadly 10, where they made movies like Necropolis Legion, and they made Blade, the Iron Cross, and a couple of other movies, Femalian, Cosmic Crush. But COVID kind of killed that slate of movies. Anyway, so there was going to be Bride of the Head of the Family, and there's resin statues you can go buy at fullmoonhorror.com, and there are comic books that you can read that in. And I really wish that would have been made, because like I said, I love this movie. It is one of my favorites, and I'm going to take it to the I want to show everybody I can, and I'm glad I'm doing the show. And if you're watching it and you haven't seen it, definitely watch it with that warning. And it's funny because definitely take the warning, because I read this part and it was very strange. Jacqueline Lavelle in 2017 did an interview, and that said this is one of the only movies that she ever let her daughter watch when she was 16. Now, I'm not sure how old she is now, but think about a 16-year-old daughter, your 16-year-old daughter watching this and seeing your naked body, you in the throes of passion up on the screen. And it's like, Jacqueline said she's not happy. I'm like, well, no shit, she wasn't happy. She's, they're getting banged by a dude, and not sure why you'd ever want to show that to your kids. Anyway, that's really all I got. This is just one that I would suggest over and over. It's fun. It's absurd and it's silly, but then again, if you're a full moon horror fan, you're used to that. Anyways, appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you guys later.